I took my best friend's life when I was 13. It wasn't what I desired, nor what the others involved intended, but that's irrelevant now. He's no longer with us. Most people reflect on their childhood and discover a day when they played with friends for the last time, oblivious to the significance. That's not my story. I had a lifelong friendship with Sam, my friend since kindergarten. Our bond was unbreakable. We sat side by side, competed on the same team, read the same books, and played the same video games. Our teachers often separated us to prevent distractions during class. However, nothing could keep us apart for long. I had a twin sister, Lily, who preferred tagging along with us rather than making her own friends. Sam accepted her presence without complaints. In first grade, Sam introduced us to Mark, his desk neighbor, suggesting we spend more time with him. I agreed, and our trio grew closer. By fourth grade, a new member, Ethan, joined us for a group project, gradually becoming part of our circle. That marked the limit of our group, and we cherished every moment together. We studied, played sports, and celebrated Halloween as a tight-knit group. It was during the Halloween of our 8th grade year that an unforeseen event altered our lives. Our usual tradition continued. We trick-or-treated together as a group, with Lily playing the ghost. Afterward, we convened at my house for a sleepover, sharing candies, watching a scary movie, and eventually settling down for spooky tales. This was the moment Sam had eagerly anticipated. Mark and Ethan were content to listen, while Lily and I lacked a story. Sam smirked, indicating his readiness to begin. "I have a particularly frightening tale for you tonight," he warned. "So terrifying, it might keep you up all night," I retorted. "It can't be worse than Mark's attempt. Go on, give us your best shot." Sam nodded affirmatively and instructed. "No lights. Everyone, listen closely." In the darkness, we gathered our favorite candies and gathered around, our attention fixed solely on Sam's narrative. He recounted a chilling story about a scarecrow on a desolate farm. Sam's storytelling sent shivers down our spines, and I vividly recall his flawless delivery. The scarecrow was tethered to a post in a cornfield, unable to fulfill its purpose of scaring crows away. The crows taunted it, pecking and cawing incessantly. One night, the scarecrow's despair reached a breaking point, and it wept. The farmer, awakened by the scarecrow's cries, demanded an explanation. "Please," the scarecrow pleaded. "Please release me. I can't bear it any longer." The farmer scoffed, responding, "Release you? You have a job to do. You stay until the crows are gone." With that, the farmer returned to his house, and the crows resumed their torment. The relentless torment drove the scarecrow to madness. It thrashed, tugged at its restraints, and finally, after hours of suffering, broke free. In a fit of rage, it retaliated, slaying the crows one by one until only a few remained, fleeing in terror. Free at last, the scarecrow presented the farmer with the dead crows, declaring, "The crows are gone. I've fulfilled my duty." The farmer, surprised but pleased with the outcome, plucked the crow's feathers and prepared them for dinner. Delighted with the taste, he demanded the scarecrow stay and continue its gruesome task. However, the scarecrow had had enough. Enraged, it seized a knife and fork, gouging out the farmer's eyes before nailing him to the same post. "Please," the farmer pleaded, his eyes bleeding. "Let me down." But the scarecrow's response was merciless. "Not until the crows are gone." Sam didn't conclude the story with a reassuring phrase like, "The end." Instead, he left us in the dark with our thoughts. When he finally turned on the lights, we remained still, and he gazed at us with an intrigued grin. "What did you think?" he inquired. We responded, unsure of what to say, that it was a compelling story. We decided it was bedtime, but my fear of the dark had intensified. The story seemed to come alive whenever the lights were off, and I would panic before restoring the light. Penny and I struggled to sleep, and when we did, the nightmare returned. It was the same horrifying tale, and I was tormented by images of the Scarecrow wielding a bloody knife and fork while the farmer's screams echoed through dark woods. The next morning, I found Penny in the bathroom, tears streaming down her face. She revealed she had the same nightmare, not just a similar one, but the exact same dream scene by scene. Witnessing her in such distress made me tremble. When I asked TJ and Billy about their dreams, they described the identical nightmare we had experienced without any prior knowledge of our dreams. Our fear grew. When I confronted Sam, he denied having the same dream. "It was just a story," he insisted. "I wanted to scare you guys. That was the point." While I didn't want to be angry with him, his dismissive attitude toward our suffering made me resentful. In the following weeks, we distanced ourselves from Sam, attributing our distress to his story. The nightmares and fear of the dark persisted, taking a toll on our lives. I struggled to focus at school, my mind constantly returning to the Scarecrow story. Even at church, I envisioned the farmer's torment, and I prayed for protection from the Scarecrow. Part of me contemplated discussing our ordeal with Sam, but given his role in our suffering, I hesitated. Our interactions dwindled, and when he inquired about our changed behavior, Penny attributed it to his story. After a few weeks, our torment became unbearable. The nightmares plagued us, and one day, I snapped at a teacher and was sent to the principal's office. My parents blamed violent media for my behavior, restricting my access to video games and movies. I was forced to spend more time outdoors, a decision that terrified me. Crows had taken residence near our property, and their presence drove me to desperation. Armed with my father's BB gun, I fired at them relentlessly, cursing their incessant cawing. One weekend, our parents were away, attending conferences at our school. Desperate for a solution, I summoned TJ and Billy. We discussed our shared nightmares, failing grades, and our belief that Sam was responsible. "He did this to us," I declared. TJ and Penny joined me, and Billy nodded his agreement. Together, we concocted a plan to confront Sam and compel him to end our torment. I called Sam, suggesting a meeting at the edge of town near an abandoned farm. We told him we were finally going camping in the field. Sam agreed and met us by an old boxelder tree, shivering with cold. We wasted no time, revealing our nightmares and demanding he lift the curse. "This is about that story?" Sam exclaimed. "I told you it was just a story." Unsatisfied, we confronted him, cornering him against the tree. Panic filled his eyes as he struggled to speak, but our anger left no room for his words. We shoved him against the tree and demanded he end our nightmares or face the consequences. "I can't!" he screamed, trembling from fear and cold. "You're all insane! Let me go!" His admission that he couldn't stop the nightmares only fueled our desperation. TJ and Billy restrained him while I retrieved a hammer and nails from my jacket pockets. I hammered a nail into Sam's right palm, and his screams pierced the night. My ears rang as I hammered the left hand, leaving Sam powerless against us. The nearby flock of crows scattered at his screams, flying away until their cries faded. Penny, tears streaming down her face, rode away on her bike. TJ and Billy urged us to do the same, and in a panic, we disposed of Sam's bike in a ravine before returning home. The search for Sam commenced the next day. We provided the police with a fabricated story, claiming Sam never showed up for our planned gathering. Deep down, I knew they would discover the truth and come for us, but strangely, they never did. The search continued for months, but Sam remained missing, alive or dead. His disappearance was covered in the news, and our school held a vigil when the search was ultimately called off. Sam had vanished without a trace, leaving us with a haunting secret. The nightmares ceased, and we clung to the belief that we had done the right thing. Our friendship disintegrated over the years. Billy distanced himself, TJ was expelled, and even Penny and I drifted apart. Loneliness consumed me, and I questioned the value of life, left alone with my tormenting thoughts. Years later, I began to doubt the events of that night. Could it all have been real? I needed answers. On the 4-year anniversary of Sam's disappearance, I returned to the dirt road, searching for the boxelder tree where we had left him. I didn't know what I expected to find, closure, perhaps, but when I touched the tree's bark, I discovered the nails still embedded, darkened by time, rust, and traces of old blood. Even after leaving town and starting a new life far away, I sometimes visit that tree, and the nails remain, waiting for me. I'm haunted to this day, wondering where Sam went, why his body was never found, and whether he might still be out there. I fear that, like the Scarecrow, he may seek vengeance. In the heart of the night, our journey had been relentless. We embarked on a cross-country expedition from the golden shores of California to the vast expanse of Texas to reunite with our kin. My younger sister, now fast asleep, unknowingly adorned her car seat with delicate strands of drool. Her gaping mouth provoked a chuckle, and I reached over to tenderly close it. My father, steadfast at the wheel, bore the unmistakable weight of our ceaseless familial demands. For what seemed like an eternity, we had passed nary a town, and the shroud of darkness enshrouded us, the absence of streetlights intensifying the obscurity. Amidst the tedium, my mind began to wander, envisioning dire scenarios. I pondered the grim possibility of a nocturnal encounter with a malicious being. As the hours wore on, my eyelids grew heavy, and my stomach's plaintive growls disrupted the stillness. I implored my father for sustenance, and he assured me that the next town would quell my hunger. The soothing sounds of my sister's gentle snores wafted through the background as I succumbed to the embrace of slumber. Within the realm of dreams, a surreal scene unfolded. I found myself standing in the heart of a vast cornfield, a cloaked figure veiled in darkness sitting eerily 30 feet away. Its ominous gaze, adorned with blood-red eyes and a grotesque, twisted grin, sent shivers down my spine. An overwhelming fear gripped me, and I began to retreat. The enigmatic figure rose with deliberate grace, continuing to scrutinize me, its gaze piercing the depths of my soul. Panic surged through my veins, and I sprinted away, the specter of impending doom bearing down on me. In a desperate glance over my shoulder, I discovered the sinister entity dangerously close. An invisible obstacle sent me sprawling, crashing to the unforgiving ground. A jolt of sheer terror awakened me from my reverie. The cacophony of blaring horns and flashing lights shattered the peace of the night. Panic surged as I realized my father had succumbed to the clutches of exhaustion. My desperate pleas fell on deaf ears, and with trembling hands I grasped the steering wheel. My father's leaden foot remained planted on the gas pedal, yet providentially, other vehicles had passed us by. The wheels slipped through my grasp, steering us off the road and into a chaotic descent. The vehicle careened wildly, obliterating a barbed wire fence and shattering windows, its violence tossing us about. With sheer determination, I managed to seize the emergency brake and halt our runaway descent. A bone-chilling crack resonated through the cabin as my head collided with the dashboard, my right arm throbbing in agony. My screams echoed as I beheld the horrific tableau before me. My father lay unconscious, blood staining his neck and shirt, while my little sister's lifeless form bore grotesque injuries. My stomach revolted, and I retched in disgust and horror. Through teary, unfocused eyes, I caught sight of a looming, shadowy figure, just moments before the car's headlights blinked out. My heart pounded so fiercely that I felt its pulse in my feet. Hyperventilation set in, and my thoughts dwindled to a singular, dire mantra. "You are going to die." Summoning every ounce of strength, I crawled into the back seat, avoiding the ghastly sight of my sister. Concealed beneath the back seat, I clutched her blood-soaked blanket and quivered with trepidation. A resounding thud from the car's exterior silenced me. Breathlessly, I retracted my hand and held my breath. The sound of something being dragged across the car's roof gripped my attention. My eyes fixated on the shattered back window, and my silent plea echoed like a mantra. "Please don't see me! Please don't see me. The dragging ceased, and I dared not move. Gazing out of the window, a tall, black silhouette loomed 30 feet away, milliseconds before the car's headlights flickered to darkness. With mounting dread, I watched the ominous figure, willing myself to be unnoticed. A sharp pain in my neck jolted me back to reality. My hands quivered as I unbuckled my seatbelt and crawled beneath the cover of the back seat, avoiding my eviscerated sister. A thunderous thump at the car's rear reverberated through my being, and I remained utterly still. Time stretched infinitely as I stared through the fractured window. The dragging ceased, and I hoped against hope that my hiding place would remain undiscovered. My unwavering mantra persisted. Please don't see me! Please don't see me! A whisper of dread grazed my spine as the creature reappeared before the window, crouching to lock eyes with mine. Its ominous gaze, blood-red with veins tracing their sinister paths, fixated on me. A grotesque, twisted grin adorned its tattered, wound-riddled visage. Its unnaturally discolored skin bore the scars of countless trials. My eyes burned from unblinking fixation, but I dared not waver. To my unspeakable horror, the creature slowly inched through the window, its eyes locked with mine. Its elongated, gnarled arm extended toward me, and I remained paralyzed. The creature's grip tightened, a searing pain coursed through my neck, and I snapped from my trance. With the last of my strength, I delivered a fierce kick to its grotesque face. The creature's otherworldly scream shattered the silence, a harrowing wail that defied imagination. It recoiled out of the car, granting me a moment of precious reprieve. Seizing the opportunity, I wriggled free from beneath the back seat and opened the car door. My injured arm throbbed, and I witnessed the unspeakable scene of my family's destruction. Panicked and driven by sheer survival, I sprinted into the night, unrelenting in my escape, mindful of my dream's foreboding message. I ran until my legs threatened to betray me, and still, I ran. A cornfield loomed before me, and I darted into its labyrinthine depths. With every ounce of my strength, I halted, collapsing onto the cold earth. Violent coughs racked my body, and I retched blood and mucus. Eventually, I regained control, fear keeping me mute. As I lay there, trembling and vulnerable, the sinister presence faded. The dark figure, the embodiment of my darkest nightmares, had dissipated. I closed my eyes and succumbed to sleep, grateful for its absence. This time, no dreams plagued my slumber. I awoke with a start, my senses alert. Cautiously, I surveyed my surroundings. Limping as best I could, I made my way to a nearby streetlight adjacent to an oil plant. Collapsing onto the ground, I wept, overwhelmed by the inexplicable horrors I had endured. Questions swirled through my mind, unanswered and unanswerable. At the tender age of 14, I grappled with the cruel hand fate had dealt me. Why had I survived when my family had not? Why was this sinister entity relentless in its pursuit? The burden of uncertainty weighed heavily. "My God, young man, what on earth has befallen you?" inquired a gravelly voice with a distinctive Texan drawl. I hesitated, contemplating my response. The stranger, his wearied eyes shifting uneasily, appeared to have spent an eternity on the road. "It's a long story," I began hesitantly, my words failing to convey the enormity of my ordeal. Then, in a moment of uncharacteristic decisiveness, I added, "I need a ride." The man's response carried a hint of sarcasm. "Oh, do you now?" A pause ensued, and he continued, "Well then, hop in." I mustered an awkward smile, and gingerly made my way around the car to open the door, wincing from the pain in my right arm. I slid into the weathered leather seat. "Hold on a second," the man said, exiting the vehicle and heading toward the trunk. An ominous premonition washed over me, and I sat for what felt like an eternity. A hand on my shoulder sent a shiver down my spine, and I froze in place. My gaze inched toward the rearview mirror, revealing the dark, towering figure hovering perilously close to my head. Its twisted grin now stretched wider than ever before. Revenge, they say, is a dish best served cold. Others argue it should only be pursued against those who truly deserve it. But my take is simple: avoid it at all costs. Here's a quick backstory. I lived in a remote area, and every day, I had to trek a half hour to school through fields and winding lanes. The tormentor of my days was a girl named Emma, whose relentless bullying made my life a living nightmare. Our paths converged one fateful day when we were both 12, landing us in detention for a fight that erupted after Emma had humiliated me in front of the entire class. As we left detention, the sun had already dipped below the horizon, and the darkness was settling in. We walked home in silence, punctuated only by Emma's muttered complaints about getting detention. Fueled by years of torment and the day's brawl, her relentless moaning pushed me to the brink. As we passed an old cornfield, an idea surged into my mind. I blurted out before I could stop myself. "Did you see that?" "Shut up, freak. Don't talk to me," Emma snapped. "No, seriously, Emma, look." She turned slowly to see where I was pointing, but the cornfield remained still, and she scoffed. "There's nothing there. Shut up and keep walking, or I'm going without you." Just as she turned away, a slight breeze rustled the corn, creating the illusion of movement. "Look, there's someone there." I could sense her growing irritation. "So what? It's probably just the farmer. At this time of night? I doubt it. I think we should go and check." Emma was getting frustrated. She wanted to leave, and I could tell I was losing her. I decided it was time to draw her in. "Fine, you leave, but I'm going to check and see what's going on. I understand if you're too scared." I started to walk away, and I could see her contemplating her options. She realized it was safer to come with me than be left alone in the dark. She followed. Boldly, I led us into the field, fully aware of my plan. Get her into the field, hide, and then jump out to startle her. It would be easy, and I'd finally feel some satisfaction. Convincing her to enter the field had been the hard part. I'd do the rest in moments. She would jump, berate me, and I would enjoy my little victory. We ventured further into the field, the towering corn obscuring our vision. Emma was tense, and I knew the plan was working. "Maybe this wasn't a good idea," she admitted, squirming. "It'll be fine unless it's ghosts or drug dealers or something." I smiled to myself in the dark, knowing I was fueling her fear. I waited for the right moment, letting her take the lead. Soon, I had created enough distance to break away from her. I stopped, attempting to remain as silent as possible. She noticed my absence shortly after. "Amy?" she called out. "Where the heck are you? Stop playing tricks. If you don't come back right now, I'm going to leave you here." I heard the fear in her voice, and I knew a few more minutes would push her over the edge. I stifled a laugh to maintain my cover. Then I realized I could elevate the game. I bent down, grabbed a clod of dirt as silently as possible, and flung it above the corn, making it land a few feet away, rustling the stalks. The plan was perfect, and Emma gasped in shock. "Amy, to hell with this, I'm leaving now." I heard her making her way through the corn. I decided to make my move before it was too late. I waited until she was close, readying myself. Any second now. I jumped out at her, screaming as loud as I could, but something felt wrong. No one was there. What the heck? Had Emma just outsmarted me? I had to give her credit if she had. I just didn't think she was that clever. As I stood there, bewildered by what had just happened, I heard a blood-curdling scream. There was no denying it. It was Emma, and she wasn't faking it. I shouted for her, ran in the direction of the scream, but found nothing. It was too dark to see anything, and I couldn't hear anything either. I fumbled my way through the field, my pulse pounding in my ears. "Emma," I whispered, sensing that shouting wasn't the right move anymore. I heard movement up ahead and stopped. I was about to rush forward, convinced I'd found her, when I heard a thud, followed by laughter. That laugh, something I would never forget in my life. It sent shivers down my spine, and every muscle tensed. I knew I had to get away. I ran as fast and as quietly as I could, escaping from that laughter. I didn't know where I was anymore, but it didn't matter, as long as I wasn't there. It felt like an eternity, but finally, I broke through the cornfield and stumbled onto the concrete road. I emerged at the very spot we had entered the field. But now, it was just me. I ran home, not stopping, even though I could barely catch my breath. I went straight to bed, ignoring my parents' questions. I hoped that when I woke up the next morning, I would find Emma in class, surrounded by her friends, laughing at me as usual. At 10 p.m., there was a knock on the door, and the questions began. By 11 p.m., the police had arrived, and more questions followed. At 11:30 p.m., the search commenced, a search that wouldn't end until 2 months later in August when the body of a young girl was discovered, bound and mutilated in a cornfield. Living with the guilt is something you never get used to.